Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Brent Venables, the Oklahoma Sooners, kicking off spring practice. And I think this is going to be a very fascinating next couple of weeks for the Oklahoma Sooner fans. We've kind of said all offseason long that this Oklahoma team going into 2025, it has plenty of question marks. Now, the fun part is for Oklahoma fans, if these question marks start to get answered over the next couple of weeks in spring practice heading into 2025, the ceiling in terms of how dangerous this Oklahoma team can be in 2025, it's real. It can be a massive problem for a lot of teams in the SEC, provided that we get some answers to the questions that we have coming out of spring practice. Want to get into some early reports coming out of spring practice for Oklahoma, talk about what this means for Oklahoma heading into 2025. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And number one, to the Oklahoma fans. And many of y'all been rocking with the fellas for a very long time when we started this thing up. And y'all know this is a team that I have a blast talking about. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas it's amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear some of the big storylines and talking points that y'all have in the comment section. Because again, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks as we talk about this team in spring ball. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. And I want to start. There's going to be a lot of Oklahoma fans that want to start with John Mateer, and it's by far the biggest storyline, right? Ben Arbuckle, John Mateer coming into this program. That's not a huge storyline for me because I know I watched every single snap of John Mateer at Washington State. I know John Mateer by himself is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, if not the best. The bigger question that I have for this Oklahoma offense is, what does it look like around John Mateer? Is this offensive line improved from 2024? Are you having some of these pass catchers, either the new names that are kind of rising up the pipeline or names that have come in through the transfer portal? Are those guys stepping up on the outside? Because if you get that, this Oklahoma offense is going to be just fine. Zero question marks about John Mateer. The question marks I have are probably on the offensive line and then the pass catcher department. But I want to start here with what I think might be the biggest storyline for Oklahoma heading into 2025, and that is this defensive line. The potential is astronomical. It would not surprise me in the slightest that if we're talking about this Oklahoma defensive line at the end of November, at the end of the 2025 year, as being one of the best units in all of college football. Why is that such a big storyline? Well, let's go look at some of the teams that have won national championships and have been some of the best teams in the sport the last couple of years, right? Georgia 2021, Georgia 2022, best defensive line in the country. Michigan in 2023, elite defensive line. Ohio State, Texas last year, really good defensive lines. Teams that have elite defensive lines normally have elite defenses. When you can stop the run, get after the passer, you are extremely hard to deal with as a defense. This defensive line could be elite for Oklahoma in 2025. And one of the names that we are monitoring closely is David Stone. I think the thing I love most about David Stone, he's up to 315 pounds, carrying it well. From what I saw during some of those spring clips that we saw yesterday, David Stone looks bigger, but he looks like the same athlete we know he can be. He was playing light in the SEC as an interior defensive lineman last year. Now he looks like a filled out body that looks like an SEC defensive lineman. And it's not only David Stone. It's guys like Danny Okoye as well going into year two. You talk about some of the biggest storylines that I have for Oklahoma in spring ball. It's not the freshmen. It's not the guys coming in through the transfer portal. It's what some of these guys look like going into year two of their college football careers. You look at the utter potential that Oklahoma has. Like we know we got a dog in our Mason Thomas. We know we have a dog in Jaden Jackson, Grayson Hall, and probably the most underrated player in all of college football. What happens if David Stone or a guy like Danny Okoye or a guy like Marvin Jones, who's not as young as some of those names, but a guy that has very big time potential? What happens if those guys put it together going into 2025? You're no doubt looking at one of the best defensive lines that you see in the country going into 2025. That's one of the storylines that I'm looking at. David Stone, Danny Okoye, PJ Adibari going into year three. You get a couple of those guys reaching their potential, maximizing themselves as football players, this defense is going to be a problem. Another storyline that I think's intriguing is Devon Mitchell. Now, is it a massive storyline for Oklahoma in 2025? No, but I do have some takes on it. He's up to 275 pounds. That's big. That's really big for a tight end. Yeah, almost concerningly big if you're considering him as a pass catching threat in 2025. My question is, all right, if we're 275, and keep in mind he's a reclass guy, his age, he's essentially should be a true freshman. If he's continuing to grow, you might just want to make the change and put him on the line of scrimmage. And look, a lot of really good offensive linemen started their college football careers as tight ends, even specifically within this Oklahoma program. I wouldn't lean away from it. If that's where his body is going, you might want to make the change. But what I'll say here is if you're going to make the change, you want to make it soon because you don't want to wait till year 3, year 4 to start monkeying around with what position this kid's going to play. Devon Mitchell, the athlete, can excel at multiple different positions. Could be a good tight end, could be good on the offensive line, probably be good on the defensive line as well. I think the idea for Devon Mitchell in this year's spring practice is figure out what position you want him to play and let him settle in at that position. And if it's 275 pounds right now and he's continuing to grow, that position might be on the line of scrimmage. Another name and storyline that I find intriguing is Kendall Daniels. And I think one of the most overblown national media conversations about Oklahoma is how do they replace Danny Stutzman? The linebacker room is going to take a massive dip in the 2025 year. It's overblown, and it has nothing to do with Danny Stutzman. I got a Danny Stutzman shirt hanging up in my closet. He's one of my favorite. I ain't an Oklahoma fan, but as a college football fan, Danny Stutzman, one of my favorite college football players we've seen over the last 2 years. This is not me saying Danny Stutzman was not a good football player for Oklahoma. It's saying guys like Kip Lewis, guys like Kobe McKenzie. You're bringing a guy like Kendall Daniels. Both Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis have just been getting better as football players the last couple of years. You're bringing just a freaky athlete in Kendall Daniels who stands 6'5", 239 pounds. I don't see this linebacker room taking this massive drop that the national media kind of thinks is going to happen. In Kendall Daniels, we weren't really sure where he was going to slide in, right? Played a little safety at Oklahoma State, moved closer to the line of scrimmage. Was he going to play cheetah? Was he going to play off-ball backer? Sounds like he's going to play the will, which I think makes the most sense. And you look at Kendall Daniels, Kip, Kobe McKenzie, Sammy O, that it's an elite linebacker room from an athletic profile standpoint. And then you got a guy like Brent Venables who's just going to develop these guys like he's the kid. I'm high on this linebacker room going into spring ball and going into 2025. Another really interesting storyline, big Ryan Foji, 325 pounds. I think it's funny because he's kind of flying under the radar when you have a guy like Michael Fasusi coming in as well. This is the biggest storyline for Oklahoma. If I had a genie that came in and told me Oklahoma's offensive line is going to be solid in 2025, completely shifts the way I look at this Oklahoma team. I don't need this offensive line to be elite. I don't think many Oklahoma fans are expecting the offensive line to be elite in 2025. But can it get better from 2024? Can it be a solid unit in the SEC? Because if you get that, this Oklahoma team is going to take a massive stride in 2025. Now you start talking about what does it look like for Oklahoma's offensive line to get better in 2025. I think it's with these young guys factoring in, whether it's Ryan Foji, 325 pounds, Michael Fasusi's clocking in at 305, Eddie Pierre-Louis going into year 2. I am extraordinarily high on that kid. The version of Oklahoma's offensive line getting better to me is with some of these young cats working their way into the rotation. Ryan Foji clocking in at 3. And why I'm not concerned about 324 is I never was concerned about the athlete of Ryan Foji. He was one of the best athletes at the tackle position in the 2025 class. And I just want to continue to put the weight on him and get that SEC offensive lineman frame going. That's big news for Oklahoma fans, expecting and hoping for some of these young cats to play on the offensive line. Giovanni Gibson, last storyline. And I think why I want to talk about Giovanni Gibson is we know we got our wide receiver 1 in Deion Burks. The question is, all right, who else is going to step up? Giovanni Gibson is looking the part. Extremely productive at the FCS level at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Now the conversation was, is he going to be able to make the jump from the FCS to the SEC and be a dude? Well, to hear that he is standing out and an SEC wide receiver room for Oklahoma, that's what we want to hear. We know we can produce. We know we can play. Is he going to be the athlete that he was at the FCS ranks? He's going to be an athlete in the SEC, and it sounds like he's fitting right in, I should say. That's another big storyline as well. Really looking forward to the spring practice. Really looking forward for the pads coming on so we can really start evaluating these line of scrimmage guys. Some good early returns from Oklahoma coming out of spring practice. If we get these questions answered that we've talked about, so Oklahoma team's going to be really good. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.